Okay, so this is Jennifer Lee. This is the 35th Automation Hour, and this is a session that we will have with Doug Bennett. For those of you who are joining for the first time, all lines will be muted. Please use the chat function to ask questions, and if we don't get to all of your questions during the call, please continue on with the discussion on the Trailblazer community. Just to also note, the deck as well as the recording will be posted on our website, automationhour.com, as well as the Trailblazer Community Salesforce Automation Hour, and also communicated via Twitter after the webinar. So I do want to highlight some upcoming sessions. We do have a special session on February 16th. We're very excited to have the Senior Director Product Manager of Process Automation, Alex Edelson, and he will be demoing the Spring 18 Process Automation enhancement. So definitely attend that session. You'll get to ask Alex questions directly about process automation. And then we have some great sessions for up to June. So if you haven't registered for that, definitely recommend it. And after the session, you'll get links to the recordings as well. And if you have a cool process automation solution, I do suggest that you click on the link to submit your idea, and we will reach back out to you when we start scheduling for the rest of the year. We also want to give a special shout out to our sponsor, Concrete.io, for sponsoring this free webinar series. And here are your co-hosts, David, myself, and Rakesh. Rakesh is in India, so we do miss you, Rakesh. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Doug. He is from Harvard. Bostonian as well. So with that, I will give it over to Doug.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jen. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are. Let me just get going here. Get caught up. So yeah, my name is Doug Bennett. I'm the Salesforce Administrator at Harvard University, Division of Continuing Education. And I've got about 5 years of experience in Salesforce. I started at Berklee College of Music with Salesforce, and then recently came over to the Harvard Division of Continuing Education about a year and a half ago. But I've been in higher education for about 23 years. And if you've been to Dreamforce at the Admin Theater last year, I did a very short version of this presentation. It really deserves a little bit more time than what I gave it there. And my format today, I'm gonna go through some things, but also then pause for questions. So I'll take questions probably at 2 or 3 different intervals during the presentation, and certainly leave some time afterwards for questions if you have them.
Doug, sorry to interrupt. Yeah. I'm not seeing your screen.
Oh, you're not? There you go.
There it goes.
All right. All right, all good now. So this use case is about creating and relating contacts with cases using a visual flow example and solution. But before we get into that, just some quick facts about the Harvard Division of Continuing Education. We are Harvard's largest degree granting college, one of 12 degree granting institutions at Harvard, serving 14,000 students. So anywhere from 14-year-old, 15-year-old pre-college students looking to take summer courses, all the way up to retirees in their 80s. We serve a very wide gamut of student populations, both on campus and online. And we've been a Salesforce customer for about 3 years. We are integrating Salesforce with our student information system called Lucian Banner. And we are heavily dependent on Service Cloud. So within Service Cloud, you don't have to have Service Cloud to use cases, and you don't have to have Service Cloud to use email the case. But we really rely on the email the case functionality to service our cohort out there. We have about 25 different externally facing email addresses where people can email that address, and the email will forward it on to Salesforce and then create a case out of that email. So we have a lot of frontline offices here, like enrollment services and financial aid, who respond to a lot of general inquiries, general questions, and they triage those questions using the case object. And we get about 500 to 800 new cases a day, so quite a big volume. We have a lot of FAQs out there, a lot of different questions depending on what department you're trying to reach. So the problem that we were running into when we were using just cases alone is that we had a lot of students like Joe Prospect here that would email us over the weekend. We are just a Monday through Friday office, and so folks like Joe Prospect would get on their computers on Saturday and Sunday and decide, well, I have a question about financial aid, I have a question about admissions, I have a question about auditing a course, and they would pile all these questions into one email and then CC financial aid and registrar and admissions, and it would go off to many offices, and then he would turn around, and right after he sent that, he would remember one other question he had and basically do the whole thing all over again. So he repeated this throughout the weekend, and all of those emails were coming into Salesforce ready to be answered on Monday morning. So our Monday morning Salesforce agents were super excited and super happy to come in and see lots of emails, lots of cases created from this student. They were really, the problem that we started to see very quickly is that they were unable to clearly see the interactions with the other offices. So they didn't know if financial aid already answered his question. They didn't know if somebody already get back to him. So that having that visibility was really key for us. But also, I mentioned earlier in the slides that we have integration with our student information system, and in order for that key student data to come over from the SIS, we have to have a contact record created for that student. And if you know anything about email the case does not create the contact. You don't want it to, and I'll show you why in a minute. And if the contact does not already exist, the cases come in kind of as orphans. They don't look up to any other contact record at all. They're just kind of out there, and they go into the respective boxes, but the agents don't have any visibility into who else got emailed and who else is responding to certain cases. So they also wanted to just kind of triage the cases. They didn't want to have to go through and answer 10 different emails when they could just kind of go to the most recent one and be able to answer all those questions from there. So a lot of best practice that you use with your email browser, we're trying to do the same thing in Salesforce. Only this time we're really trying to get visibility into the other inboxes to see what else is going on. And then also we want to make sure that we're creating a single point of contact for that student. So as our cases come in, they get round robin assignments to different people. And so, if 10 cases come in, they're going to be, the case owner is going to belong to 10 different people, and there's no single point of contact. So when that student calls up with a question, we have 10 potential owners of those cases, and that's obviously very confusing. So we had a very strong need for something like a visual flow, something where we could, use screen elements to let the agents become kind of owners of the data quality. They could create the contacts using information from the email and assign it to their cases. So that's one problem we're trying to solve, is create that contact. And then the other problem we're trying to solve is have a really quick lookup of all the other related cases that belong to the student. and see where those cases are at, who owns them, maybe get a sneak peek as to how another office may have responded to that student. And then if an agent is brave and they want to take over all the cases belonging to the student, they could reassign all those cases to themselves to create that single point of contact for the owner. And then of course we use Chatter quite a bit on the case to kind of coordinate among the frontline offices. And then also there's a data quality element here as well. We want to check for duplicate contacts. So not just creating contacts, but we want to make sure that there aren't already duplicates out there, because everybody struggles with that, no matter, even if you're not in higher ed. So I'm going to get into the demo, and I know if there were Salesforce folks on the line, they would actually not be happy with the fact that I'm in a classic, but there's no lightning shaming going on here. For Service Cloud users out there, you may know that Lightning is a little bit behind in Service Cloud. Right now, the Spring 18 release is actually looking very promising for Service Cloud, so I'm hopeful. But for this purpose, we're doing the demo in Classic. But if you speak to me in the summertime, we might be doing this in Lightning. So here's some very basic, case list view. We've got some cases here. I'm going to go ahead and click on a case, and we see this person is looking to, hang on a second. This person is looking to get a full refund on their financial aid, and so we want to kind of figure out what else is going on here and see. And we also notice that there's no contact for the person, so we're going to go ahead and click this button, and that launches our flow. And it takes us into some screen elements here, and giving some instruction to the user. And this is where we get to kind of edit the name from the email. So some background here, before I actually built the flow, I had to do some legwork and creating some custom fields. So in the case, there's actually this web email and web name. Those come in through the email to case. And what I did was I created some custom fields, and I parsed the web name after the first space, and I created a web first name, and then I did the same thing with the last name. So I broke that name string into two different fields, so that we could eventually use first name and last name to edit. And sometimes, if I did this from like my Harvard account, that string is Bennett, Douglas. So the first name would be Bennett, and the last name would be Douglas. And so obviously you want to edit that transposed name. Sometimes they come in as all caps. So this is where we would want to edit the email profile name, because this is what we're going to prepare the data as we create the contact. So I'm just going to go Douglas Test, and we can say whatever we want. Say we know that this person likes to be called just Doug and not Douglas. We also give the option to our agents to tag them as the student or the parent. So sometimes they share emails. The parent will be emailing on behalf of the student and vice versa. So if we happen to know who's emailing us, we can tag them. We're just going to say that this is a high school student. We can put in some other information. We see that there's no other cases out there right now belonging to this student. But we're going to go ahead and click next, and it's going to do its thing and say, congrats, you created a new contact from this case. And I just put in that link there, and we can, if you wanted to, you can go to that contact, Doug Test Bennett. But as we finish the flow, we'll see it just takes us right back to the case that we started on, and it links the case that we launched this from with the new contact we just created. So saves us a ton of time, because otherwise the agent would have to come over to contacts, he'd have to create a new contact, do all that with any information they know, referencing the email. And then once they created the contact, they'd have to come back here, do the look up the exact contact they just created, save, So, for each case, you're looking at saving about 2 or 3 minutes per case, maybe even more than that. And so it's really saved us a ton of time. And go back here to the other piece of this is that we get to, sometimes it will recognize when you already have a contact. So we already created a contact for this. Sorry about that. Hang on a sec. This one. So if there already was a contact, we would already have, it would find that for us, and we could say, all right, that's something that I still want to use, or I could even go to those contact details and see more information there to know, say if I didn't know if it was a student or the parent, I wanted to do more research there, or I could still opt out of that and create a new contact instead. At this point I will, and then I'll label that person a parent and finish. Now we have 2 contacts out there, but we reassigned we reassigned that case again to the new contact that we just created, which was that. So obviously it gives us a lot of flexibility here to see what's going on, and we can also get a very high level of visibility of what the other cases are out there. The one thing that we don't use this for is for accounts, but you could do that if you wanted to. You could in higher ed, we don't use the account as much as they do in the corporate world, but if you wanted to kind of reassign the account as you reassign the contact, you could do that as well. So we also saw those labels in there, the labels that I was showing for the contact. And that's what this label is here. So we actually use the custom field, formula field, to create the label. And in the visual flow, you get to select that field as your label. So one of the things that we did here was if there was a FERPA warning on the student, and that's just a little checkbox that we have on the contact record, that label would show, FERPA warning is true, and it would tell the agent, critical information that we need to know if there's a FERPA hold on the student's account. So that was been very useful to the agents as they try to navigate what's going on there. So those are the custom fields that we have, and then here's the case label. If we have any related cases out there as well, we have a case label. So there's obviously good need for that. I don't know what happened to my other related cases in this one, but if I had related cases here, it would be showing up right here. Sorry about that, but it would basically do a search, and I'll show you in the flow canvas. It would do a search for any other related cases with that same email. So let's go into the flow canvas and check it out. First of all, are there any questions?
Doesn't look like we have any questions yet, unless somebody wants to put in some quickly.
All right, we'll keep going. Let me open up the canvas. So if you recall, this was set from a button or launched from a button. So we're just setting the case variable in the button. That's what gets us started on this. We just do a fast lookup using that variable that we set in the button. and we just do a search for basically the same case that we used, and then we set some of these other fields that we're going to need later on in the flow into variables. And then we also do a record lookup in the contact, and this is where we just we want to also look at any other contacts that aren't related to cases, or other cases that aren't related to contacts as well. So there are two different. You might have other cases that belong to different contacts, but you can find that out by searching on the different email addresses. So down here at the branch, the decision basically puts it into two different branches. They're almost identical, but one is the contact exists, and then the other one is if it does exist. So everything else after that happens is pretty much the same. So I'm going to just kind of take you through one branch here. And this, we just say if its contact lookup is true, then it's going to find the contact. If not, here's the default outcome. So we're going to confirm that we created the new contact. So this is where I can, you saw that I put in that web first name and web last name. So you can just pre-populate those fields with that value, and then you can still edit those fields. And then we use those fields later on when we actually create the contact. Here we're creating the contacts, some of the variables that we already set from the email or from the screen. You saw all those other fields that I didn't fill out, but I could have filled out. And then here's the fast lookup on the related cases. So we want to find all the other related cases that share the same email. Again, using our variable that we set in the very beginning. And we're going to store that actually in an S-object collection. And this is where we can use a loop to look at all those items. So the screen element, actually, this is really important to show. And dynamic record choice is one of my favorite things about visual flow. So when you create a dynamic record choice, it's almost like the same criteria that you would use in any kind of fast lookup or record lookup. But this is where I put that label, the custom fields that I created on the cases. You can identify that here, and then you can store the value as the ID. So as people check off the checkboxes, it's storing the ID of that case. So this is a really important concept because what we're doing here is presenting multiple checkboxes, multi-select checkboxes, and then if I wanted to say there were like 4 cases and I wanted to just reassign 2 of them to myself, this is how we're going to do it. So you start by finding all of your cases, all those checkboxes, and then as we're going to assign all those cases to an S-object collection, and then we're going to start a loop, and the loop will bring us down to a decision. So if the decision is basically saying if in that related existing cases multi-select checkbox, if it contains any IDs from the contains an ID from the S-object collection. And at this point, we're just kind of looping iteratively through that collection one by one. So the multi-select checkbox actually contains, it stores all the IDs that you pick as a string. And that actually took me a while to figure out. Everything that you see here, I've kind of researched online and figured out from other people, but that took a while to figure out that it stores it as a string. And so this is how we basically say if the ID for the case is in that string, then it's a yes, and the yes will go up here to record update.
Doug, sorry to interrupt. Can you go full screen? We're having people ask for that. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. So just to back up here, if we see that ID is contained in that string and it's a yes, then we'll go to record update, where we update the ID of the case. and then we set the other items here as well, the contact ID and the case owner. So those things we're doing through the loop, and then it will iteratively go back and go to the next one that it found in the string, and then before it goes to the end of the loop. I'm sorry, this is the yes right here. And then we finish on that screen at the very end. So that's basically how we're going to, you can put the multi-select checkboxes on the screen, and then the user, whatever user picks, they can pick all of them or some of them or none of them. That's how you would reassign certain values to those records. So we're not only doing the creating the new contact, but we're kind of bringing all the other related cases together under that contact that we're creating. The agents here use this as well for cases where they already have contacts. And so they don't have to start from a case that doesn't have a contact. They can start from a case just to get a high-level view of all the other related cases that are out there, and then pick and choose and see which ones relate to the kinds of questions that they're trying to answer. All right, I'm going to pause and take some questions here. Any reason you did not use a quick action? From Miranda. Quick action, you mean a fast create or fast update? Remember, I'm not in, well, the quick action probably wouldn't have been useful for the screen element. Remember, we want to have user interaction with our agents to make sure that they're providing the best data quality and checking on duplicates and providing the right names. So we want to be able to use the screen elements and pause through the process and engage with our agents. All right. Corey's note says multi-picks are evil. Yes, Corey, multi-picks are evil in Salesforce, but these are actually just multi-pick lists in the screen elements, and they're actually much easier to work with. But yes, multi-selection pick lists in Salesforce are evil. All right, so some of the takeaways. Oops. Sorry about that. So, I built this through many versions. I used a lot. Some of you know that you can use 50 versions out there to build your flow, and I think I used all 50 of them. And along the way, just kind of brought the agents who are going to be using this in to kind of test and get their feedback, and that led to some good small wins. A lot of the ideas that I got for this flow were researched just online. They're totally out there. Some I got here from Automation Hour, but there were some other really good ideas out there. And I think as I look at the versions, I kind of went really big and then scaled back some of the features in here because it was getting kind of almost too much. I did try to do searches on multiple email addresses on the contact because we do have other custom email fields, and that got really intensive for the agents. Well, not only for the flow to run, but for the agents to see all that information. And then, good advice, just each time you create a new version, insert good notes about what you're changing, because you may have to go back to one of those versions and use it later. And then dynamic record choice, I'm using it in quite a few other flows right now, so it's a really powerful tool that you can use that I think, give a lot of power to visual flow. So it's something, if you don't know much about dynamic record choice and visual flow, it's something that you should definitely check out. All right, so that's about it. Any other questions?
We'll just give folks a couple minutes to type away.
Yeah, I know that Service Cloud is not something that everybody is using, but like I said, you don't have to have Service Cloud to be using cases. A lot of the business process that we have here are leveraging on cases and email to case. But it's something that I think that you could apply the same concept to other lookup relationships, one-to-many relationships, whether it's the opportunity up to the contact or the campaigns. It's a very useful tool to have. And I think one of the things that I see with the users is that it gives them more ownership of the data as well. When they see a duplicate through this process, they're likely to flag that for me to resolve. So it gives them more confidence in knowing what the data is and being in control of their data.
All right, Corey asks, are you doing anything to log actions taken by your automation?
Good question, Corey. We're not doing anything to log actions, but we could easily do that if we wanted to. This is the process that they run before they actually respond to the email. When we do reassign the owner, that is captured in the case history, so we can kind of see, the track record of the path of that ownership of that case. But we're not doing anything currently in the flow to log any actions. But we could. Any other questions?
Anyone else? You can also ask general process automation questions. It doesn't have to necessarily relate to Doug's specific presentation. Too bad we can't see if someone is actually typing.
Yeah, no. So, and I should mention as well, this was the first flow that I built. So building this over time was the way that I learned flow. And, I'm not going to get into all the versions that I built, but, it took a lot of just iterative changes to get here to this point and a lot of researching online. But don't be intimidated by flow. It's a very, once you understand the concepts and, you start thinking like a developer using variables and loops, you start to realize sort of the usefulness of a visual flow and how it can be used. This is a flow that's launched by a button, but flows can also be launched by Process Builder. We also have some flows that kick off with Process Builder. Another example in cases is that we have a lot of confidential information that comes in through the case. I mentioned our financial aid office is using this as well. So when they have documents that have Social Security numbers on them. So we want to make sure that as soon as the case is closed, we delete those documents and purge them from Salesforce. We don't want them hanging around. So we use Flow and Process Builder and Flow to kick off, when a case is closed, it kicks off a flow that will loop through every email within the case and delete the attachment to make sure that we're getting rid of that sensitive information.
Great. We do have a question from Ellen. How do you end the flow back on the case screen? I end up on my case, but in a separate window. I also can't get a finish button to show up. Haven't tried support yet.
Very good question. Let me show you. So that's actually not a feature in the flow itself. That's a feature within the button. Let me go to the button real quick. It's a return URL command within the button. So everybody can see that. So it's basically, here I'm setting some variables, but you can also set these commands right here, URL commands, to save the URL of the case ID and then to return to that URL when you finish. So putting that in the button URL is what returns it back to the original case. As far as getting the finish button on the flow itself, there's a finish button we want. Get back to the flow, sorry. So there should be options within the flow itself to set the finish button. I'm sorry, to set the pause button, but the finish button, I'm surprised that you don't see it. I think if the screen is your very last element in the canvas, you'll get the finish button, or whatever screen is the last. Let's see if we can go check that out. So don't show, so as long as you go into the screen element, it's not saying don't show finish button. It will let you see it. Hope that answers your question.
Great. Anna has a question. How would the flow be launched in Lightning? My understanding is there are no buttons in Lightning screens. There's the ability to launch flow within a button.
Right. So these are just URL buttons. And in Lightning, those still work. So if I go back to the case, it shows it's sneaky. It's not. I wish they would out of the box just kind of show you the command or the button, but it's right here. So I'm not sure if you get the arrow, the drop-down arrow, but the URL buttons still work within Lightning. But some of the features in Lightning, some of the features in the flow didn't work in Lightning at the time. I was a dummy and I refreshed the sandbox after the preview deadline, and so I went back to winter 18, not on spring 18. So that also didn't help my case here in trying to show this in Lightning. Yeah, finish button at the end of the screen. See what other questions there are. Yeah,
okay, we're going to do last call for questions. Oh, that just came in. Flows can now be directly embedded in Lightning pages with the ability to conditionally display a flow based on record criteria. Yep, that's right. Right, last round for any additional questions related to Doug's presentation or general process automation questions.
All right, well, I will definitely post. I think there was a request to post that URL hack, the URL button here, but and Jen's going to be posting the video, and I'm happy to answer any other questions afterwards and share more information about how I built this. So thank you, Jen and David. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.